Much love, and I am Wayne Johnson with Doc and Queen Ministries. Going to share something with you on today. I think it's appropriate why I picked this shirt this morning. I am him. Going to just share you a little background about myself and just see where it takes us. Not going to have a scripture lesson on today, but I mean, you really think about it, if I did, it would just be in the beginning because that's kind of where I'm going to start with myself. Again, I'm Wayne Johnson, born here in the Richmond, Virginia area, and grew up actually as an only child, even though I'm not an only child, but I mean I'm only child based on my mom. But I grew up kind of quiet, been fairly thin all my life, always cared about people, and I think that caring about people is because I didn't have anybody there to play with. And it's just interesting how we always want what we don't have, but God gives us what and who we need to be. Growing up as an only child, always longing for someone else to be there with me, but there wasn't. And growing up with all that resentment, and I think we all deal with that. We all have a way of wanting what we don't have, thinking that the other side is better, but not realizing until later in life, maybe some not at all, that God knows exactly what He's doing for us in our lives. I've got many friends who have brothers and sisters, and of course, they wish they were the only child. So it just seems like many times, whatever situation is, we have a way of complaining and think that our situation would be better if it was something else. So grew up, only child, loved playing, rarely got in trouble. And the reason why I rarely got in trouble because I liked playing so much that I didn't want to be able to be held back. In those days, when you get in trouble, you either got a spanking or you got punished, and or both. Our world has kind of changed a little bit today. Well, actually, changed a lot. We're not looked upon to actually spank our children and or punish them, and we kind of want our kids to be able to learn how to make decisions because what we learn, and I'm a QMHP, is one of my professions. I have a lot of professions, but one of my professions, I'm a QMHP, and so what that looks like is we've learned in that field is that we all go through trauma, and some people trauma is more than others, but the only person that we are ourselves. So our trauma is our trauma, and my trauma was I always wanted someone to be there, and so today when people are going through that trauma, we want to go back and try to heal them of that trauma. But many times we find that people don't really want to heal their trauma. They just want to go through life trying to mask it, which is very difficult. And if we just go ahead and heal from it, we can go ahead and move on and leave it back. Like I said, I'm a QMHCP, and so what that looks like is that people with their trauma, they tend to not be able to identify that trauma themselves because they've learned how to mask it so well. What we try to do in the field is we try to help them come to grips with that, which is challenging because most of the funding sources want you to fix them quickly, and many times it takes time. But let us get into me because that's what I said I was going to do. So I grew up only child, elementary school, went to school with my cousin who he was kind of like the opposite of me. He enjoyed seeing kids fight. I'm the opposite. I always wanted kind of like to have peace. And so it used to bother me when people would fight. At an early age, I understood that at the end of the day, not a whole lot has changed. That person is still that person. That person is also still that person. So I always just wanted peace. So when you get to about fourth grade, fifth grade, you're into, as a male, you're into starting to like the opposite sex. And so I did, but I was quiet, I was shy, and I was thin, so I wasn't that big. And so there was some, females that had caught my eye, but I was too shy to say anything. And then nothing ever went and happened. So I moved out into the suburb area, fifth grade, but I went to middle school, starting in sixth grade, and then again, you like some young ladies, and again, nothing took off. Going to high school, pretty much the same thing, and nothing took off. For some reason, I never felt like I was a bad looking kid because I used to always hear the adults say how handsome I was. However, it doesn't mean anything to be handsome for you if you are not being liked by your peers of the opposite sex. So I never dated or went with anyone in any of the schools that I attended, which was a traumatic experience for myself, part of my trauma. So met a young lady, and she didn't go to my school. I met her through my cousin, and me and that young lady end up dated off and on, but eventually got married. So that person I just owe so much to, because that was discovering me. That was handling my trauma. But what I want to let you understand is we all have this trauma, and that we need to be able to identify it and go through it. Many times we don't even recognize our trauma, but we need to. There's not a whole lot of talk, because back then we just was told to just get over it. Well, today we got a lot more knowledge about things and how people handle actually attachment. And so the attachments are so important. I'm going to also share, it's funny how we always say opposites attract. And it seems like for the most part that is so very true. And you got to understand, God knows what he's doing. He knows what you need. And, the good book speaks of men needing their woman that God gives them to accomplish what is actually for the will of God. Your purpose is to satisfy God's will for your life. And as a man, he gives you a wife who's going to help. We look at the word and read the word submit, but it's really more to help that particular male / husband to get to the purpose for God's glory. And so that's what that person is for. And as you see a lot of times, that person is the opposite of you, the husband. I'm going to speak from that standpoint, being that I'm a male. So I'm going to speak on fight or flight, not in the terms of fighting whether you're going to run from a fight or you're going to stay there and fight it. I'm going to talk about it when it talks about, decisions, arguments, and things of that sort. For me growing up, I wanted to solve problems quickly. And it took me a while to understand, within the past couple of years, my spouse was the opposite, wanting to take some time out and then deal with that later. Well, here you got me wanting to solve a disagreement quickly, and here she wanted to take some time, needed some space before we deal with it. And we have to understand that that's part of it. Now, I know the book talks about don't go to bed angry, but I think you can still manage those things without selling it, where both people come together. There's a compromise. And a lot of times, as the husband, we don't want to compromise because we've been so trained and taught about wives submitting us, and everything starts with us, and you're going to do it our way. But God didn't do it as control. That's more the way that the world does things, control. The top controls. But as we see with Jesus, the top serves. So the husband is supposed to serve his wife and serve his family, not necessarily control. And most of us grew up, especially those who grew up in the 70s and 80s, we learned about control. And we're just learning today that it's not so much about control, even though the corporate world still operates on control and not so much serving. But I now can see where I wanted this done immediately, and where she didn't want it done. She needed time and space to ponder before we go to it. We have to understand, and we need to start getting these things out so we can all do better. There's got to be a reason why those who get married still end up 50% or higher getting divorced, because we're not teaching just certain things that needs to be known. We're not teaching it from a biblical standpoint. We're not teaching it from an economical standpoint. We're not teaching it from a mental and so many others. And these are the things that we need to share and know about, so this won't happen. You have to really kind of understand that believers who get married, or believers in general, is supposed to show the world how to operate and why God is so good in their life, because they are operating under God's provision. And many times we as believers, we're no better than those who are not following in God's ways. So we all are going to deal with trauma, because even the good book tells us that temptation is going to come. But God, through his son Jesus, tells us that we are to stay spiritually connected. So when temptations come, we are ready for them, so the enemy will flee. But many times we don't even do that ourselves. So what I am trying to accomplish here is to say that we all deal with trauma. We all are going to be tempted. We all must handle things differently and look at things through the spiritual lens first. Get in right relationship with God, and so that we can adjust and do the best we can on this earth before we are called home, or if we're called home, because the good book says that all of us won't die, because if Jesus come back before we pass, then there's going to be something totally different. Right now, as we look at it, we've dealt with that because Jesus hasn't come back, and everyone at some point dies. But we have to be ready, and we have to know how to deal with our trauma, because what really happens a lot in life is we go through life holding things that we should heal from, and we end up not healing from it, and we go through life with all this baggage on us. If we think about if we're carrying all of that baggage from childhood, because many times we think it's gone until something later in life happens, and we don't even know that that is a part of the trigger of something that happened when we were younger, and we still have carried it. It is just so interesting that we take shots today for stuff like, the mumps, the measles, the chicken pox, and they say that it is still dormant inside of us. So it never went anywhere, but we don't feel the effects of it every day, every week, every month. We don't sometimes feel the effects for years, sometimes not at all, but that doesn't mean it's not there. And so we must, as a people, try to make things better for each other, especially those who you are in close relationship with. I know this has been long so far, so I just wanted to share that with you. I hope that this has helped. Take care. God bless. Don't know what this is entitled. It might just be I'm Him. But it was just good to share this information with you. I really want, and I'm in the field because I love helping people, and I want all of us to be able to enjoy life as best we can. Take care, God bless, and once again, much love.